Welcome to NET Vaper Reviews. This review is 3 parts. The introduction on what I'm going to talk about, then a second section and a third section. Let me explain what's this all about. I was in a vape shop, a local vape shop that I'm quite friendly with, and I go in every once in a while, and we meet other vapers, and we were talking about vaping issues and problems vapers have, and one of the guys was saying to me that the most dramatic, stressful part of his vaping is the re-wicking. So what he does is he drags it out as much as possible when, on the odd occasion that he wicks it right, and it doesn't leak, it doesn't gurgle, doesn't spit back, and it's all working properly, he drags it out until the flavor becomes unvapable. So I told him 2 things. First of all, you're ruining your coil. Second, you don't know what the bacteria buildup in the cotton is after so long. And third, the whole idea of naturally extracted tobacco, the flavor is so delicate that after 2 days you have to re-wick, not after 2 weeks. So anyway, I showed him how to re-wick his tank, and within a few minutes he says, wow, the flavor is amazing. It made me think that most probably there's quite a few vapors out there who need some guidance on re-wicking. Now, if you're an experienced vapor, you can watch this review as knowledge or interest, I'm not sure. But if you're a new vapor or someone who upgraded from a stock coil to a re-buildable, to an RTA, I hope you will gain some knowledge of this video. So without further ado, because I hope this review won't be long enough, too long. Too long. So if it is too long, I apologize, but I hope I'll try to get it as short as possible, but this is an important issue. Wicking is one of the most important things of your RTA, and I will talk about it in the last section. And also they were asking me a lot about juice flow. What's juice flow all about? So I said I'll do a review, show you a few tanks with juice flow, a few different type of decks, and how I wick them, and explain how I do it. Hopefully it will be beneficial. So let's go first down low to the second section, and then we'll talk back again on the third section and finalize this recording. Okay, see you in a second. Right, so in front of us here we've got a few tanks, RTAs mouth to lung, and different style designs. So we'll start with, for instance, the juice flow. Most RTAs mouth to lung do not have juice flow. Okay, let's take for instance the reload. The reload doesn't have a juice flow, and it is a top airflow. So when you talk about top airflow, leaks are less prone. When you talk about bottom airflows, is more prone to leaks if you don't do the wicking right. Now, the deck of the reload is a classic deck. Yep. You've got the juice ports on either side. You've got 2 posts, and the coil you screw in either side. You put in your wick on either side of the coil, and that is it. Now, the trick with these type of designs of decks, that's the most common, is to get your length of your wick right. Now, in order to get your length of your wick right, it's so important to get it right first time. Because normally if you don't get it right the first time, you get leaks. And then as soon as you get a leak in a tank, you automatically, subconsciously think that this tank is rubbish and this is not for you. Okay, so either you get it right in the first time, or you persevere and you try again and again until you get it right. But in order to get it right in the first time, the general rule is to always measure your wick before you make it wet, before you moist it. So when you put in your wick into the coil, you always make sure that it's not too tight. If it's too tight, you would get dry hits because the cotton underneath the coil is not getting enough liquid because it's too tight and it gets dense. Another thing, if normally the wick under the coil is too tight, so the sides are also very thick, right? So what you got to do is, to get it right, is to put in your cotton in the coil in such a way that it is tight but not over too tight, meaning that when you pull it, you can feel a resistance. So you know that there is enough cotton in there to give you a nice vape, but not overly stuffing it that is not getting any juice. And then what you do is you fold your cotton, your dry cotton, over the side of the deck to see the length that you need. So for instance, this I wicked, so I would not show you on this tank, but I will show you on another tank that is a similar method, the K-Fon Prime. Now, the K-Fon Prime is a bit of a different design. It's a raised deck. You can see the difference between the two decks. Yeah, this is a raised deck, GTA style, some people call it. And there is another way, a deck that looks similar to the K-Fon, but it is a bit different. This is the cog. As you can see in the cog, you have the juice, the wick goes down into this section here. So it's a raised deck and the juice accumulates in the bottom here. And then when you lower your wick, it goes down this hole here and absorbs the liquid. So it's a similar mechanism to the K-Fon, but it's different that you've got these holes that you can see where your wick is reaching. It's an easier deck to work with because when you put in your wick, you can see it poking from the side and know that you're getting the right length. So let's try for a minute I'll wick this deck and I'll wick the K-Fon, and then we'll go further. So, okay, so how do I do it? After I show you the wicking, then we can discuss on the different methods of which is a better mechanism. Okay, so here I've got a Muji pad. Okay, I'm using my scissors, the friskers. Normally I cut my friskers with my longer scissor, the 21 centimeter, but at the moment it's in use. So I'm going to use this one. Okay, so this is a perfect cutting for a mouse too long. How do I know? Well, it's experience. Okay, and this you would get after a while. You would know what size cotton to use, because you only have to do it once or twice, and then you know exactly the size. Now, if I am gonna pinch this side over here, that is a bit thinner, and then I sort it out when I put it in the coil, in the deck. So now I would know if this is too thick or too thin by simply pulling it and feeling the resistance. Okay. Let me just get this through. I have to get it thin enough. Okay. Now I'm pulling it now. I'm putting my finger over the coil. it's too thick. I can feel it is too thick. If I pull it very hard, it will go through, but it's too thick. So what do? I pull it out and take off a piece. Okay, so you know that the first attempt was not the right thickness. Now we'll try the second attempt. Now I can feel it's pulling in fairly. There is a resistance, but I know, but it's not too thick. So I know this is the right size. Now I fold the cotton. You see where the deck is, where the juice actually would be. So I fold the cotton to that size, to that length, and I press it down so I get a dent in the cotton. And then I just cut it and see for myself that is the right size. So when I fold it, it is touching, just barely touching the top of the deck. Now, since I've got the first side done, the second is a bit easier because I just judge it by the first cutting. Yep. And then just to confirm that, I bend it again and it's exactly right. So then what I do is I fluff it up. Now, some decks need thinner cotton and some decks need thicker cotton. Now, when is this style deck? Yeah, with this insert that you put in your coil and cotton into this space here, normally you would want a bit thicker cotton. In contrast to the reload, for instance, that here you've got a closed compartment of the juice, there you want thinner cotton. I'll come to that in a minute. So what I do is I just simply tuck it in gently without condensing it to keep the fluff. So what you get is a nice piece of cotton going down and still fluffed up, and it will absorb the juice nice and easy to the coil. I'll do the second side, the same idea. Now this side is a bit thicker. So what I do is, if you got tweezers, or in this instant I'm using my scissor, you just comb out just a little bit to get it a bit thinner. Sometimes your cotton is thicker on the one side and thinner on the other. And that is done. So now I can tuck this in easily the same way I did the first one. Yep. So here we go. So this is now all wicked up and ready to vape. And as you can see, the fluff of cotton is sticking out from the bottom. Not too long, not dragging on the bottom, just touching the deck. So when the juice comes down to the deck, it will hit your cotton, absorb it, and bring it to the coil. So you will not get any dry hits, and you'll get good flavor. So that is the cock done. Now I'm gonna later put in the liquid because I don't want to lengthen it now too long, this review. I'll just put it in here knowing that this is done. Now we'll go to a different style deck. This is the K-Fon Prime. Now the K-Fon Prime is the exact same deck as the Light. Yeah, it's exactly the same deck, but the only difference is between the Prime and the Light is this is a top. You put in your juice from the top and it's got a juice flow. This you put in the juice from the bottom. I'll show you later. And there's no juice flow. Okay, so now if I want to put in a wick into the K-Fon Prime, and the K-Fon Prime is a perfect example on a raised deck, but with an enclosed juice well. So I will cut exactly the same, more or less the same size as I've done with the cog. and we'll test it again. See, sometimes it's a bit too thick, so you just take off a bit. When it's too thin, you just have to cut another piece, obviously. So therefore, always cut it a bit extra, so you could always thin it out, because if it's too thin, you need to get yourself another piece. Okay, so let's feed this in. And now I always feel it when I start pulling it. This is the right size, because you see, I pulled it in, it moves from side to side, but there is resistance. Now again, I take my cotton, I fold it down. Now, the juice wells over here are a bit smaller. So you don't want them to be too thick, but this is very forgiving on wicking. So that means you could even put it a bit thicker and it will still wick right. So what you do is you lower your cotton to the black O-ring, but it doesn't, even if you don't have a K-fon, you always fold your wick to where the juice is coming in from the tank. And then you know that your cotton will wick it right. So I fold it down and it's exactly right. You see, it is touching just above this black O-ring. So that's where the bottom of the juice well is. And I'll do the same on the other side. And this is a bit too long, so I'll just cut it just a fraction more. Now, is this too thick or too thin, the cotton? So, we'll check this out. So, when this side is a bit thinner, so I just fluff it and gently lift it and insert it into the opening of the juice well. And then guide it down without actually pressing too hard on the cotton. I don't want to make it into a, a very tight, so it wouldn't absorb. You just gently lower it down. So now you know that this cotton is in this compartment here, touching the bottom. And the juice will enter from underneath and the cotton will just absorb it up. Now here is a bit thicker, so again I would just thin it out a very little bit, just to give it a bit of a trim. That was it. And then I just fold it nicely. I'll try and do it facing you. I don't think I'll be able to do that, so I got to see it. No, I got to do it my way. So I got to see what I'm doing. And again, I feed it down gently. So what you end up is a perfect cutting of cotton that is in the coil, not too thick, not too thin, and the lengths are perfectly tucked in, nice and neat into the juice wells. Yep. Okay, so that's the K-fon Prime style. I'm gonna take this later and put some juice in it. Again, now, in this tank, for instance, you've got a juice flow. Now, the juice flow is sometimes an advantage and sometimes a disadvantage. You can see the juice flow holes through the glass, right? So if I want to open the juice flow, I got to turn it anti-clockwise, and you can see they opened. Yep, these juice flows here. Now, juice flow is a bit of a gimmick, to be honest, because the K-fon light works perfect without juice flow. Okay, and I'll show you other tanks that haven't got no juice flow, work perfect. You don't save much juice by juice flow, because if you get it wrong, you either dry your wick or you overflood your wick, okay? And the perfect example is in the RTA, mouth to long. Now, the is a different style deck, you see. Now, I'm going to come soon to the point where when you buy a mouth to long tank, you want to make sure that it's mouth dedicated for mouth to long, because the minute you're buying a tank that can be used for both mouth to long and direct to long, it's a different layout of deck. First of all, you can put in here a much bigger coil for direct to long. This is a 2.5 millimeter. You can put in here 3 or 3.5 even. And the design of the deck, I'll just take out this piece of cotton, is a completely different design. You can see it's more like an RDA. It's the whole width of the deck. So in these kind of tanks, you need very thick cotton. So if you put in here 2.5 millimeter, you would not have the thickness, the right thickness of the cotton to fill up the deck. So you need really to use a 3 millimeter coil in a diameter in order for you to get enough wick to actually cover the whole width of the deck like this. It's easier to wick because you don't have to worry about the thickness, if it's too thick or not. But what you get is the juice flow problem. So, for instance, if I put in this tank in here, you can see my review on this tank. You can see the juice flow. Let me see if you can see it through here. You can see my review on this tank, but let me just show you quickly. You see here you've got the juice flow. Now you can see the juice flow opening and closing. Yeah. Now when it comes to this tank, the juice flow is so sensitive that if you overdo it, what happens is you get the juice is just flowing down to the deck. And if your wick is not thick enough to cover all angles, you will just get a complete flooded deck. And it's a nightmare. I mean, I had it a few times and the juice just comes out through the air hole here. So this is a bit of a problem when it comes to juice flow. Okay, now this juice flow is very sensitive, but you've got juice flows that are less sensitive, like the K-Phone Prime I just showed you. The drawback with the K-Phone Prime is that if you, let me just close this tank, if you add juice, if you add juice to this tank and the juice flows are open, you will get gurgling for at least 5 minutes, okay? So that is to do with this juice flow. Now there is another tank, the Expromiser V4, that is also got juice flow. Now the Expromiser V4 is a superb tank, and it's got both advantages. It's got an advantage that it's a raised deck, so it's easy to wick, and also you've got here, you can see where the juice wells are, the holes, the wicking holes are. So when you cut your coil, your cotton, you know exactly where to cut it to. Because if you just fold it right to the bottom of this section here, you will be able to, for instance, I will show you. Okay, now if I fold this cotton, you can see it's reaching just about covering those holes from the outside. Now you're getting a bit of a tiny amount extra length because you're not overlapping it, this lip. So when you're doing it this way and it's covering most of the holes, you know you've got the right length. And this, again, needs thicker wick because you can see the juice well is quite large. So I'll just tuck this in, and you just make sure to tuck it in that it covers the whole width of the juice well so you don't get any leaking. So basically this whole thing is now covered in wick, and any surplus of juice the wick will absorb, and anything that's left here will wait until this wick needs absorbing again. So this is another style. But when you talk about the juice flow here, this is a bit less sensitive juice flow than the R. You can see here your juice flow. So you can control it. You can see how much is your juice flow open or closed. Yeah. So you can choose, now this is fully closed. In contrast to the Ha, you can't tell how is your juice flow open or not, except after experience that you learn that, you know, if you turn it as much as this, as much as that, or less, then you can control your airflow, your juice flow. But it's a bit more complicated. For instance, I will tell you what I mean. You can watch the review on this tank. It will be easier for you to understand what I'm trying to say. But this ring over here is the juice flow. Now, if they're both standing opposite each other, this and this is fully open. So, to be honest, I had to work it out myself according to the clouds on the ring, knowing where to stop. So I know that 3 clouds before the full opening is the right juice flow for this tank when I do it mouth to lung. Okay, this you can watch my review on. But what I'm trying to establish here, that this juice flow here is a lot more forgiving and is also a lot more in control, the same as the K-Fon Prime. I found that if you leave it on the smallest hole open for 50-50 VG-PG and 2 for VG-70 minimum, it's perfect. So these are a few styles of decks with juice flow. And now we'll go to another style of deck that is parallel post. Parallel post is one of the easiest decks to work on because you just stick it in 2 decks. You don't have to worry about parallel decks to each other. And in this case, this is the Amit, Geek Vape Amit Mouth to Long RTA. Yeah. This is a very easy deck to work on. But this is, again, a different style deck because what happens, the juice comes around here and you put in your coil, as you can see, in the 2-post, and you could use a beefier coil. I mean, this is an inner diameter 3mm, and then you just wick it, easy enough to just put in. Now, when you cut your wick to put in this, is very easy as well. So what you do is quite simple. Let me cut another piece and then I can show you what I mean. So again, let me cut a piece of cotton. All right, now this obviously is a bit of a bigger coil, so I don't want to thin it too much. I want to keep it thick. So I'll just take off a very small strand of just simple hygienic reasons. And then feed it through the coil. Now you can see that when I pull it, it's going in fairly easy and not too, again, not too much of resistance. But you want to make sure that there's enough cotton in there that it should absorb the liquid, but not over thick, that it should become too dense. Now, when you cut this wick over here, so you bend it again against the deck till the bottom of the deck where the juice comes in from. And then when you lift the coil, the cotton, you will notice that it's exactly over the O-ring. I already learned this after doing it once or twice. So then I know that this cotton I cut exactly by resting my scissors on the O-ring. Then you just fluff it up. The reason why you fluff it up is that it should absorb liquid better when it's fluffed. When it's not fluffed, it's too condensed. It's too tight. Okay, so this is perfect. Now this side is a bit thicker again. So you just thin it just a little bit. I mean, you can see it's very straightforward. The minute you get the mechanism right, you'll be able to know which deck needs this type of cotton deck. You know, you'll learn yourself how to do it. It just needs once or twice. So this now is fully wicked and ready to go. So what you have is a nice piece of cotton, not tucked in too tight inside the juice well, and it will absorb the liquid from underneath where the juice accumulates here. Yeah. So this is a very easy deck to work on. And a similar deck to this is the Inniken Eris mouth to long. I've got juice in here. Let me just get a quick vape. And I will show you the type of deck that this has. Although I've got wick in it, but I will show you in any case. So you get an idea. Right, now, this coil, this cotton is, I can change it now really. So what I will show you is how I do it. So this is a raised deck, again, similar to what we've seen before. For instance, with the, oops, where is it gone? Oh, hold on. Oh gosh. 1 minute, let me pause it, sorry. Right, okay, I found it all the way underneath this desk. So you can see it's a similar, this is a much more raised deck, there is, but it's a similar concept that you can see the small bits of cotton coming out from the bottom. You can see yourself, yeah? So it's a very similar mechanism to the cog. Okay, so let's do the wicking here. So what I do is quite straightforward. I'll take out the wick, and this is the dirty wick. Now, normally I clean the coil, but since I haven't got here the water, I didn't plan on doing this now, but since I took it out and I saw that it needs a bit of cleaning, I'll just dry fire it and clean it without dipping into the water. You can do this as well. I normally dip it into the water is a better way of doing it. Okay, so now it's clean enough for now. I'll have to clean it again next time I do it. But just to give an example on how to wick this thing. So let me just put it on the coil master. And let me get my wick out. And this is one of the easiest decks to work on. Obviously, you can see my review how I did the coil. So now this is a 3mm. I'll tell you the ohms. A 0.88 ohm round wire Kentel that I've done myself. So I need a bit of a thicker wick to accommodate the 3mm. And we'll do it straight away. Okay, now, so let's feed in the cotton. Okay, now again, I place my finger on top of the coil and I can feel that it's just the right resistance, not too thick and not too thin, but I will pull it towards the left side of the cotton where it's a bit thicker. So I get two nice cuttings on the side. Sorry, if I would have put it halfway through this cotton, I would have gotten too thin on one side and too thick on the other. Now again, I lowered the cotton up to the deck and I dent it, and I know exactly how far down I need to go. So if you fold your cotton over the deck, you see it's just about above the deck. Yeah, it's very similar to the cog. And I do the same on the other side, and here I haven't got much to cut. Just a very little amount, and now I just fluff it up, and since these are quite large openings here, I don't have to thin it much, and just place it in gently into the wicking holes, and what you're going to get is exactly the same. So it's hanging down over here, and you can see it just about sticking out and just about touching the deck itself. So when the juice comes along here, it will absorb it very nicely. Now this I need to just thin out just a little bit as well. You'll normally find when you deal with mudgies that one side is a bit thicker than the other. I don't know why that is, but it's no big deal. You just thin it out. Let me just trim this a bit more on the bottom here. Should be completely straight. And you just fold it in nice and gently. Now, you can see here that I've done a little mistake. Here is too short. I would like it to go down a bit further down. So what I do is very simple. Pull it a bit, just a bit, and then tuck it back in. No harm done. So like this, you get equal. Now it's perfect. You see, on both sides, it's equal length. And this tank really is done. Now, I haven't got the juice here to moisten it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back into the tank where I've got some juice in it as well. And if I give it a few minutes, by gravity, it would moisten the cotton. So you don't vape it straight away. You give it a bit of time to absorb the liquid, and you're good to go. So now there is another method. So this was the raised type of deck with your cotton going down on either side through a loop. Okay, now there is another style, the Brunhilde. The Brunhilde is a different style altogether. This is more of an RDTA, where you got this steel rods going down the tank, and the coil is on top. Yeah. Now, this cotton is good. It's a very strong coffee, naturally extracted tobacco liquid, so it's dark. But here, this is one of the easiest decks to work on, because this is really like an RDA. So you put in your coil and you put in your wick, and then you don't have to thin it on either side, because you need to cover this whole width to absorb the liquid that's coming up through the tank itself. So here you've got an advantage that you don't have to really worry about wicking, because wherever you wick it, the main thing is to be enough wick to go into the coil without too much resistance, but then spreading out, fluffing up the cotton ends and covering these two holes. Yeah. That's it. And this tank is a superb tank in any way. Now, there is other tanks that have got the MD, for instance. The MD is a classic tank, but the problem is with this tank is I don't want to open it. You can watch my review on the MD. You can see the layout of the deck. The minute you open the MD and it's got juice in it, you're going to get leaks from the air hole on the base. The MD is a very fussy tank. The only way that I can refill this tank is really going really low on the juice. The minute I've got a full tank and I want to change my wick, I've got a problem. So I normally vape it, and when I come to the end of the tank, I change the wick and clean the coil. Okay, now we went through, I've got here the Pandora is a similar mechanism. I shall show you this one. See, I'm not going through all the tanks. I just want to show you different types of decks. Now, this is very similar to the Eris, but the difference is that the wick comes to the bottom of this deck without you seeing the ends of it. So the same method of cutting your wick would apply as if you're doing the K-Fon, because this is an enclosed juice well. So what you do is you take your wick and fold it to the bottom here, reach the bottom here, because underneath there's two holes. You can't see it when it's empty. And then you cut it and tuck it in. It shouldn't be too thick. This you have to thin out, but it should be enough to cover the whole width of the juice well. And this tank, if you don't get it right, you will get dry hits. Meaning not a proper dry hit, but you'll get a burnt taste because the wick is too thick and it's not absorbing the liquid as good. Yeah. Now, as another problem with this, you see, because the airflow is so versatile, you need to do the inserts right. Okay, this is a bit more involved with the airflow. You can watch my review on this one. It's a very nice tank, but it's a bit prone, if you don't get the wicking right, it's a bit prone for leaking. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back on top and we'll discuss, before I will go on top, I've got here the Pioneer. Now, the Pioneer is a very similar deck to the Reload, and it's more of a classic deck. The advantage with the reload is that the chimney is very low and narrow and therefore gives you tremendous good flavor. But if you don't get the wicking right, it has to be thick wick to cover the juice wells properly. Otherwise, you'll get leaking through the air holes again. So we'll talk about it on top. But here we've got another tank that this is a bit of a different style. This is the true mouth to long from EH Pro and Nature Vape. I love this tank. This tank is one of my best mouth to long RTAs. And I'll just show you, it's a different type of deck. This one is, you see, you haven't really got a juice well as such. You just simply cut it and put it into this like a little indent in this ring here, and you just lay the cotton against it. Now it's very important that here you get the length just about right, that it should touch the deck below. And it's very easy to see when you've got your cotton dry, you just fold it until you can see that the cotton will actually touch the bottom. And that's the way it looks like. This is a different design of deck when it comes to the wicking. But it's very effective. If you get it right, you never get a dry hit. It's perfect. I mean, I am super happy with it, although it's a bit old now, this tank. Apparently it's a version 2 coming out. But this is a perfect tank. Okay, now I've shown you a few styles. I'll show you a last one. I mean, the Expomise of the Steam Crave Mini is again a very similar design to the Reload and yeah, it's a very similar design. The only difference is that here you can see your juice, where the juice is coming from. This hole over here. Yep, this hole over here. Oh, 1 minute, let me get my fingers right. Here. So again, you cut your cotton that it should reach that hole. And you thin out your cotton in order for it to tuck in nice and easy. And when you tuck it all in, you should see a bit of the cotton through this hole here that you know that will absorb the liquid. This has got a glass chimney. Apparently it gives better flavor. I'm very happy with the Steam Crave. It's a top tank. Never had any problems with it. You just have to get the wicking right. But this is a deck. This is the, I reviewed this tank, Aquatus, I can't remember, it's called a Zeta from AS Vape, AS Vape Tech. Now this is a different style altogether. This is a style where you have to cut the coil before you put it into the deck, but it's the same design as the Aries, but much lower. So you could really put in this is more like an RBA type of deck, whereas it's a very small deck and you put in very thin coil cotton to go into these little juice wells, and they pick out from over here. See, there's like an indent. So if I put in the screwdriver, you can see it going right through. Yeah, so this is a different design. Okay, let's now talk about how to choose your RTA, what's important, what's not important, and to get things right and sorted. Okay, we'll see you in a minute. Okay, so now to complete this review, this topic, not the review, you've seen how different design of decks and different type of wicking styles, but they all have one thing in concept. They absorb the liquid that goes down through the tank, down to the deck, and the coil and the wick absorbs it to the coil. So I didn't think this review would take so long. I just noticed how long it took me the first 2 sections of this video. So I want to conclude this fairly quick. But it's very difficult to rush this up, because this subject is so important when somebody wants to buy an RTA that he's never bought before and he's going from a stock coil to an RTA. It's important that the vapor should know what's involved when you deal with RTAs, and also to see different designs of tanks, of decks, and how to cut the cotton, because one of the most important thing is the wicking. Any leaking, any burnt flavor, any dry hits, that takes away the whole pleasure of RTA's mouth too long is the wicking. The coil is not so important. The coil, you can use round wire, you can use core Clapton. You can watch my review on different types of wires and what each one is advantage, disadvantage. It's not so much the coil, it's mainly to do with the wicking and the layout of the deck. We came to a stage that most RTAs that I've showed you below, and I've got here, I don't have to lift off, I've got here maybe over 10 RTAs. They're not, there is difference in flavors. Yeah, I'm vaping now the K-Phone Prime. Delicious flavor. Delicious flavor. It's to do with a few things. It's the design of the deck, the design of the chimney, how condensed the chimney is, the length from the coil to your mouthpiece is a lot to do with it. For instance, the Pioneer has got a very shallow chimney. The K-Phone is as well a very tight design of the chimney, and so forth and so forth. But the 3 things that I think is the most important when you come to choose an RTA is, besides the flavor, is the ease of building the deck, is the method of the coiling, of the wicking. Is it something that you can see the end of the tails where they reach? So like this, you can get them right more often than you don't when you can't see how much you're actually tucking in. And that's why it's so important to cut it the right way, so you know that 90% you got it right in regards of the length of the cotton. Also is how many moving parts are there in this tank. I mean, the least moving parts is most probably the K-Phone Light and the like of it and the like. The most moving parts is the Ha. Yeah, no, this is not the Ha. Where's the Ha? Here, this is the Ha. This has got most moving parts. The K-Phone Prime has got quite a few parts to it as well. So the ease of wicking, the ease of building your deck, that it's the right size, the right length, that you can get in your coil easy, and this comes, the Innokin Eris is one of the easiest ones to deal with. Let me just get the airflow on it. Give it as a vape. I put it in dry, if you remember. See, it's still taking time. I absorbed the liquid already. Didn't take long. This is one of the easiest tanks to build on. The layout, the design, the flavor is superb. But I'm not going to go through now which tanks are my favorites, because it's going to take just too long. They're all my favorites. I like each one of them for their own right. Everyone has got ups and downs. My main focus of this review was to enable you to see different types of design of tanks, of decks, and the way of wicking. And in order for you to choose the right tank for you is, again, to see what type of deck. You can watch reviews and to see when they open up the deck, you can see what's the layout of the deck, to see it's easy to wick, easy to coil. Juice flow, I don't recommend for first time those who upgrade, because it's a bit messy. You have to know how to deal with the juice flow. It doesn't take long on the K-Form Prime. You just twist it a few times anti-clockwise, open the juice flow, close it. You have to remember to close it when you put in the juice. So goes for the Expomizer V4. It's same idea, same concept. The Ha is even more difficult, but when you get it right, I'm not crazy about the Ha. The mouthpiece, this is the mouse-to-long mouthpiece. It's not the right mouthpiece. The right mouthpiece is, for instance, the Pioneer, and other ones, you know, the narrow, long ones. And even on this one, yeah, perfect mouthpiece. So juice flow, I don't recommend as a first time. If you're upgrading, go for something without juice flow. But the Expomizer V4 is very easy. The juice flow, you can see it yourself, and it's easy to control. This is fully shut, and then you just turn it, and this is fully open. So it's fairly easy to control, so I definitely recommend this one. All the rest of the tanks, they're all very good RTAs. The fact that I bought them means that I like them and they're good. Otherwise, I wouldn't have reviewed it, right? But how do I end this review to give you the right advice? When you want to buy an RTA mouth to long, what should you look for? First, you should look for the layout of the deck. When you watch a review on this type of tank, look at the layout of the deck. Is it raised? Is it flat? Can you see the edges where the wick goes down? Can you see how long should it be? Yeah, but if you cut it the way I cut it, you'll always do it right, because you're cutting it before you're actually tucking it. You're getting it right. Also, always check to see that the overall quality of the RTA is a good quality. I mean, the Pioneer is perfect, but when you want to screw back in the deck into the tank, it is not as easy as you would have thought. Other tanks are easier. You have to line it up. A lot of times it doesn't screw in correctly. You have to undo it and re-screw it in. The MD, for instance, has got a leaking problem when you want to add juice and the tank is fairly full. The Pandora has got a tremendous configuration on airflow. That's a big plus, because this is one of the things when you buy an RTA mouth to long, you want the airflow to be as tight as you like it. You don't have to go as tight as it can, but you have the option to get it as tight as you like it. The Pandora has got a problem that if you don't wick it right, you get leakage. If you do it my method, you will get it right. And the True tank is a true mouth to long RTA. They're coming out with another version, but this tank I never had any problems. Sometimes if the wick is too thick on either side, because there's no actual place where you fit in your wick, it lays against the deck. If it's too thick, you might get leakage. The secret is there not to do them over thick. I don't want to go through every tank, but you've seen down below quite a lengthy discussion about how to wick. So in other words, you have to make sure the deck is easy to work on, easy to wick, and the flavor. I mean, most of them have got good flavor. I mean, you're talking about very small differences. In 2020, all RTA mouth to lungs are good flavor, because all have similar concept of chimney, all have similar ideas. No one is going to go out, everyone is going to manufacture their RTA according to the established winning formula, right? So the flavor is not such a major issue, is more of how easy it is to build, how easy it is to wick, and the overall quality, and not too many moving parts. Some tanks, you have to pay a prime for it. You have to pay a bit more and put in a bit more of an effort. like the Prime and the V4 and the Ha. Okay, the Ha, I'm not recommending to the faint-hearted. I love it. I got the hang of it. All other tanks is very straightforward. So more or less any RTA mouse to long that you have today, the new ones coming out, I'm not sure. I came to a stage where I am now very choosy what I buy. I'm very choosy because I've got plenty here, so I am very choosy. I've got my mind set on something, and when I get it, I'll review it. Hopefully it's good, I'll review it. I was thinking about the Heather, but the Heather, again, it is a mouse to long and direct to long. I'm not crazy about this sort of, either it's a mouse to long or direct to long. You can't have it both. I find it's compromising on either side. Yeah, so I think hopefully I touched the subject of how to help you find you right RTA mouse to long. Yeah, I hope I touched it all. And if you have any comments or any comments or something that you're using that you're very happy with, leave it below for the benefit of everyone. I hope this review, it's again a long review. I couldn't get it any shorter than it's now. You could always fast forward here and there, come back, pause and go back to it. Yeah. Okay, I hope it was beneficial. Until the next review, take care. Bye-bye for now.